So,
Hackathon. We're going to wait a few minutes just to let people join us. Make sure to give them a chance. All right, well, hopefully as everyone's joined us. So hello, welcome to our UCSF COVID-19 Hackathon. Just want to introduce myself. I'm Jenny Jancy. I'm the campus director of the UCSF Launchpad here on campus, and also the program director of the Catalyst program. Just to start with a few housekeeping things, we are recording this, and we will be posting it on our website, so you can review this whole broadcast later. Also, we will be taking direct questions. If you have them, then please put them in the Q&A at the bottom of your Zoom, and we're going to be answering those questions at the end of the presentation. So thank you. But yes, we are so excited to have everyone here tonight. I'm really, really heartened and inspired by all the outpouring of participation. Nate, do you want to go to the next slide? We have over 300 participants, which is just amazing, and 45 plus projects, not only from UCSF and other Bay Area institutions, but really institutions across the country and internationally, some from Oxford, from Moscow. We have lots of people from industry and different startup companies too, and we really welcome everyone to come together and collaborate. There's such a diversity of talented individuals that are joining us, and each and every one of you will bring a unique skill set to the table. I just know it. So we have some scientists here, we have practicing clinicians, some entrepreneurs, programmers, and just really looking forward to see what happens and the life that new eyes can really bring to a project. So it's exciting when people that normally wouldn't have met really come together to create something special. So not only do we have a diversity of people, but we have a complete diversity of project ideas that have been submitted so far. And these are kind of listed on the next two slides. Just going to call out a few just to show the range of this. There's one that's an innovative PPE for fields beyond the medical community, such as airlines and dentists. There's an artificial intelligence-based support for children's mental health during these times. And then on the following slide, there's a COVID-19 forecast dashboard that models the disease spread, and then the balancing act of the mitigation strategies and how that affects the disease spread. And then in therapeutics, we have things like screening drugs that target the open reading frame that induces the inflammatory cytokine expression. So really a wide breadth of projects that hopefully will be inspiring and you'll really want to join and help out on. I do want to let you know that there is totally a place here for everyone. Whether you have an idea that you've already been working on for a while, a new idea that's yet to be explored, or probably most likely, you just come to lend a hand, wherever you can. So I really encourage you to meet lots of people, welcome new members into your team to get different perspectives. This cross-fertilization of people, their ideas, their backgrounds, and new perspectives can really lead to a true robustness of a project. And finally, I just wanted to say that I am super impressed by the resilience of the UCSF and really the worldwide scientific community to go the extra mile in combating the issues we face today. So I know we all have our different struggles right now, whether you know someone with COVID or you're living alone for what seems like an eternity, or you have, you're dealing with caring for kids and schooling and trying to work remotely on your full-time job all at the same time. I acknowledge that we all have a different place right now, but I really want to thank each and every one of you for showing up to help out, and finding solutions to our COVID-19 related problems of today. So again, thank you for joining this hackathon. I truly am really looking forward to seeing what all of you come up with in the next 3 weeks. So now I also want to introduce someone who knows a bit about hackathons. I'd like to introduce Nevin Greenwich. He's a former student of the UCSF Innovation Ventures Entrepreneurship Center. And he's kind of built his career focusing on telemedicine and digital health products, whether he's an engineer or an entrepreneur himself. So this is his 4th COVID-19 hackathon. And he's currently working on a project to enable the equity and access to quality, local, and trusted telehealth providers. So Nevin, thank you so much for being here.
Hi, thanks, Jenny. Again, I'm Nevin Greenwich, and as Jenny mentioned, I'm a former student at UCSF Innovation Ventures, where I studied through Startup 101. Yeah, as Jenny mentioned, this is my 4th COVID hackathon. So I wanted to join and help out, share my experience and any advice I could offer based on what seemed to have worked at previous events. So some of you may have already seen me in the Slack channels. A few of the other hackathons I've done around COVID involved the data event, pandemic response hackathon, the MIT COVID-19 challenge, and the Techstars Global Startup Weekend event focusing on COVID-19. At each one of these, I've really been blown away by the talents and really the brilliant ideas that people are bringing. Despite all the dire headlines and the scale of the crisis that we all see every day, I feel like these challenges really help me find optimism. These events really bring together the doers, the makers, the builders, and the problem solvers. So that's all of you, everybody who's watching. And so I'm really eager to meet many of you over the next 3 weeks and see what you build. At these events, people come up with new projects and they keep them forward. They keep building them forward and they make a real impact. So I encourage all of you to think beyond just the 3 weeks, to think long-term about these projects, how they can affect the world during this crisis and also in the years to come. I also encourage you to meet folks outside of your team with similar interests. We're all going to be on our own teams working together over the next 3 weeks, but there's really some great people here, and I encourage you to meet all of them. So good luck. I'm here to answer any questions over the next 3 weeks. Feel free to ping me with any questions if you want to chat about telehealth, telemedicine, digital health. And with that, I'm going to transition to Charles, who's going to talk about the UCSF Launchpad Catalyst program.
Thank you, Nevin. My name is Charles Hart. I oversee the UCSF Launchpad and Catalyst program. Nate, if I can have the next slide, please. Yeah, the Launchpad is, it's part of the Blackstone Launchpad Techstars network of university programs promoting student entrepreneurship. There's, I think, 25, almost 30 Launchpads currently in universities around the world, but mostly in the United States, many in Ireland. And again, the focus is on promoting student entrepreneurship. Next slide, please. Yeah, the Catalyst program is UCSF's translational accelerator, which is focused on helping UCSF principal investigators and other investigators that have ideas or discoveries that could be commercialized, leading to patient benefit. And the key of the Catalyst program is our network of over 200 volunteer advisors, most of which come from industry across many different biomedical tracks. And we also provide seed funding to projects. The Catalyst program has been going since 2010. And if I can have the next slide, please, Nate. Both the Launchpad and Catalyst are part of UCSF Innovation Ventures. Innovation Ventures is the focus at UCSF around all aspects of entrepreneurship and innovation. And in addition to Catalyst and Launchpad, it includes the Technology Transfer Office at UCSF, which is the Office of Technology Management. It includes Industry Partnerships Office, which is the Office of Strategic Alliances, as well as the Entrepreneurship Center, whose centerpiece is a course called Startup 101. And finally, the UCSF Innovation Ventures Philanthropic Fund, or the Invent Fund, which is focused on supporting UCSF projects that have really strong promise for continued success and commercialization. And so it's my pleasure to introduce tonight's in charge of innovation ventures. His name is Barry Selleck. He's the Vice Chancellor of Business Development, Innovation, and Partnerships. Barry was an undergrad at University of Pennsylvania and stayed for his PhD in biophysics and biology. And he immediately, he went to UCSF as a postdoc. And after his postdoc at UCSF, he immediately went into the industrial sector. He joined the biotechnology sector. And his first job was at Protein Design Lab, now called PDL, where Barry co-invented the technology that underlies the humanization of monoclonal antibodies, which has led, as many of you know, to many drugs currently on the market. Barry's career has been focused in biotech, both as a company founder, a venture capitalist, a CEO several times, and then most recently, 3.5 years ago, came back to UCSF to put together the Innovation Ventures Consortium, which he currently leads. And so it's my pleasure to turn the screen over to Barry Selleck.
Well, thank you very much, Charles. I really appreciate that generous introduction. First of all, I would like to thank Dr. Jenny Jancy and Nate Prorock, who did the heavy lifting of creating this hackathon under Charles's leadership. I would also like to thank Steve Greenwich for his support. And many of you will undoubtedly get to know Steve much better in the coming weeks. I'd also like to acknowledge Dr. Seth Blumberg, an MD PhD postdoctoral fellow here at UCSF, who actually was the first person to suggest this event to Jenny and Nate. So Seth, thank you very much for that. I know that you are a participant in this, so we wish you a lot of success with your projects. There have been a handful of events in my life that have left indelible impressions on many of us. The assassination of John F. Kennedy immediately comes to my mind. Although I was only in 4th grade at the time, I still vividly remember my teacher, Mrs. Toynbee, breaking down in tears and hearing the news. But we got through that, and aside from some regret as to not knowing what might have been, we were able to move on. The Challenger disaster was another event that was painful at the time, but which we ultimately got through. Other events, such as the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., the shooting of Kent State students who were protesting the Vietnam War by our own National Guard, as well as 9/11, had far longer lasting consequences. The former two contributed to accelerating the civil rights movement here in the US and the ending of the Vietnam War, whereas we're still living with the consequences of the latter in the form of all sorts of heightened and sometimes painfully inconvenient national and transportation security. Like 9/11, the COVID-19 crisis is having a global impact, albeit more in terms of health and economic security, not to mention fundamental changes in how we as citizens, friends, and coworkers interact with one another. And now that we've experienced this vulnerability, I suspect that even when a vaccine and cures are developed, many of the behaviors that we've adapted over the past several as well as upcoming months will likely endure. In the meantime and beyond, however, what can we do to protect ourselves while allowing life to return to a semblance of normalcy? That's one of the goals of this hackathon. One of the lessons learned during the global health crisis is that collaboration and cooperation are key to our weathering this. In the absence of national leadership, coalitions of governors of neighboring states have been formed to share equipment, supplies, epidemiological data, and best practices. Healthcare workers, grocery clerks, bus and delivery drivers, and first responders have stepped up and are widely regarded as the true heroes of this pandemic. On a local level, when we at UCSF realized that we had inadequate supplies of N95 masks, swabs, and reagents for conducting diagnostic tests on suspected COVID-19 patients, we reached out to literally hundreds of companies and institutions, many of which we might otherwise have thought of as competitors, and were inundated with donations of all sorts of supplies as well as volunteers. Nate, if I could have the next slide, please. Within UCSF itself, 200 students and postdocs from dozens of different labs volunteered on a 24/7 basis to staff a pop-up CLIA COVID diagnostics lab under the leadership of Professor Joe DeRisi, shown in this figure, who is the co-president of the Chan Zuckerberg BioHub at UCSF. Nate, next slide, please. But perhaps one of the most remarkable examples of cooperation, and one with direct relevance to this hackathon, has been the effort led by Professor Nevin Croghan, who heads our Quantitative Biosciences Institute. Nevin, along with 124 collaborators from 12 different US and international institutions, much like this hackathon, mapped the complete COVID-19 human protein interactome, which has led to the identification of 332 protein-protein interactions with 66 druggable host proteins and 69 drug candidates, many of which are currently being evaluated for the antiviral as well as safety properties. The inspiration for the project was actually a dinner between Nevin and a colleague from Mount Sinai in early February. The core project team was formed later that month of February, and working 24/7 and in the spirit of sharing their findings with the rest of the scientific community as quickly as possible, their initial results, some of which are depicted here. Next slide, Nate. That's it, thank you. Were published literally 4 weeks later on March 20th in bioRxiv. These are just some of the representative data that were presented in that publications after literally, it was actually less than 4 weeks worth of work by these 125 different collaborators. Next slide, please, Nate. And this is simply the cover article from the bioRxiv. The actual article was published several weeks later in Nature with an additional 25 co-authors in addition to the 100 that are listed on this bioRxiv publication. Now, Nevin has separately said that a project of this magnitude, if not for the urgency imparted by the pandemic and the willingness of all 125 investigators to make this project their highest priority, would have otherwise taken a minimum of 18 months. So 18 months compressed literally to 3 to 4 weeks. As of 2 weeks ago, 318 labs in 38 countries have requested and been provided plasmids and reagents from the project team in order to pursue their own follow-up studies. While I'm optimistic that an effective therapy or two is going to result from these efforts, a potentially even more important outcome has been the demonstration of the power of cooperation, bringing together people from different backgrounds and with different skill sets, setting egos, ownership, and intellectual property concerns aside to solve an otherwise intractable problem of global importance. Now, this hackathon is 3 weeks as opposed to the 4 weeks that Nevin and his collaborators had. And while you will have well over 300 participants, you won't have access to the resources at UCSF, Mount Sinai, Institut Pasteur, the Howard Hughes Medical and Gladstone Institutes that Nevin and his collaborators had. But by the same token, you don't have to cure COVID-19 to have a meaningful impact. For example, here's a hack that Chinese school children came up with to enforce their social distancing guidelines. And that wasn't even a novel idea, since Emperor Shenzong of Song actually pioneered the look back in the 11th century. But, and this is important, these simple so-called 1-meter hats are enabling these school children to get back to school and their parents to return to work, back to a semblance of normalcy. By the way, next slide, please. Here you can see the German as well as Lowe's shopper versions of the same strategy. And while we may initially chuckle at the Lowe's shopper, a closer look at the photo actually shows a cannula providing oxygen to the guy glaring toward the camera, who is obviously at extreme risk of infection, hence his social distancing hack. In my experience, solutions to problems that seem utterly complex to those who have already been working on them frequently come easily to those with a fresh perspective. In my second job, following my postdoc at UCSF, by the way, We were focused on molecular approaches to inducing anergy or immune tolerance in patients with allergy and autoimmune diseases. We were working with pretty famous immunologists from Stanford, cloning and expressing MHC class II receptors with bound peptides to develop a therapeutic in what was truly a Rube Goldberg approach to inducing immune tolerance. Without success, by the way. Decades later, the startup company in South San Francisco took up the challenge of inducing immune tolerance in children with what can be a life-threatening allergy to peanuts. Instead of devising some sort of complex intervention with the immune system, what this company, Aimmune, did was to grind up peanuts and administer a regimen of increasing doses to kids in order to achieve sufficient tolerance to avoid anaphylaxis in the event of an accidental exposure. In this case, a fresh perspective led to an important $2.3 billion company that contributes to the economy and employs a lot of people, the results of whose efforts have the potential to save the lives of children who are otherwise at risk from, well, peanuts. So in closing, I really want to thank each and every one of you for participating in this event. Although you won't have access to all the resources that Nevin and his team had, you do actually have the advantage within your 300 plus participants of a greater diversity of ideas and perhaps even talent. So I'm optimistic that you'll come up with, if not an actual product, then at least a concept or two that can be pursued and which can be every bit as valuable for society as anything else that's been done to date. So good luck, and to all of you, go ahead and change the world. Thanks again.
Thanks, Barry. I'm sure everyone is giving you a raucous and hearty standing ovation right now, and it's a bummer that we can't hear their applause.
Oh, but my computer is vibrating, Nate.
Nonetheless, thank you very much for your inspiring words, and we will now transition to event logistics. My name is Nevin Croghan, and I am the program manager with the UCSF Catalyst program and the EIR with the UCSF Launchpad. In a more traditional in-person hackathon, the project leads would normally pitch their projects to the audience to recruit their team members. Given the size that this hackathon has grown, it's no longer feasible for each project to live pitch their projects. Consequently, the hackathon organizers have uploaded the project submissions into a Google Sheet that the project leads have updated with additional information, at times even including video. Please note that column E of the Google Sheet lists the skill sets that each project team is looking to recruit. You will use the Google Sheet to browse the projects and learn more about each of them. Once you've explored the Google Sheet, log into Slack to connect with the project leads, learn more about the projects, mingle, and ask questions to determine the project or projects you'd like to join. Please note that the introductions channel is an opportunity to introduce yourself and connect with others, as well as the team-specific channels to further ask questions related to a project. And we encourage all individuals to ensure a good fit amongst the project team. Once all projects are solidified, the project leads will populate column F in the Google Sheet. And the hackathon will be fairly decentralized. Each project team is empowered to make decisions for itself as a self-running, self-reliant entity, and they will work together however the team sees fit. This could be through email, phone, text, Zoom, Slack, or any other mutually agreed upon communication channels. Upon conclusion of the 3-week hackathon, each team will submit a 3 to 5 minute project demo video via this hackathon's dev post site by Wednesday, June 10th before midnight Pacific time. Other materials are optional, but not required. The hackathon organizers and judges will review the project submissions, and we will host a finale showcased event to highlight all of your hard work and progress on June 16th, 5:30 p.m. Pacific time. More details will follow. And this slide deck, as well as the recording that's happening right now, will be sent to all of you. So these are all hyperlinked and ready to go. So even as I mentioned that the hackathon will run fairly decentralized with each team working as its own self-running, self-entity, the teams will still be able to tap into UCSF Catalyst Program's extensive network of expert industry advisors. At the beginning of this webinar, Charles acknowledged that that is really the magic that the Catalyst program has. And via the mentorship request form, we'll try to pair you and your team, your needs, with an advisor or mentor that will be available and uniquely fit your challenges. Additionally, on our website, we've curated several high-quality COVID-19 resources. Now for judging and awards. The judging criteria include how innovative or novel the project concept is, how well the project concept was implemented during the hackathon. And granted, we understand that some projects have participated in other hackathons and are inherently further along than other projects, so they're just starting now. But we'd like to see how far or what you can do as a result of this hackathon experience, taking it to the next phase to continue translating it along the pathway. Another criteria will be the degree of potential impact that the project will have and how feasible and applicable the project will be in the real world. Judges will include experts in all dimensions of the hackathon, including the clinical and medical fields, mental health, epidemiology, public health, digital health, medical devices, diagnostics, therapeutics, while including seasoned entrepreneurs, venture capitalists, and other professionals and executives. As for the awards, we're still working on drumming these up, so the exact details aren't quite ready to be released, but we're hoping for a combination of cash, consultation hours, and computing credits. All right, as for next steps, upon conclusion of this webinar, as I mentioned, I will be sending all participants this slide deck that include the links to all the specific platforms and sites that I mentioned. The event recording will also, there will be a link to that in the email, and it will also be posted to our website. Next, we will encourage you to explore the Google Sheet and start working and mingling with the different teams on Slack. Following that, projects leads will finalize their teams on the Google Sheet, and the teams will all begin working on their projects over the next 3 weeks. Hopefully that's all pretty straightforward, but again, this is being recorded and there will be follow-up emails for anything that remains unclear. And we'd like to thank our sponsors for this, both the UCSF Blackstone Launchpad powered by Techstars, as well as the Catalyst program. And we've received great support of how to run a hackathon. And we have judges from all these other organizations, including UCSF CTSI, UCSF's Innovation Ventures, the Center for Digital Health Innovation at UCSF, the Translational Research Institute for Space Health, Entrepreneurship at Berkeley Haas, and the Citrus Institute. Thank you very much to everyone involved in helping support this fantastic project. All right, with that, we're going to transition to Q&A. At the beginning, Jenny mentioned that we were going to be answering your questions, and I see some questions are already coming in. So without further ado,
yes, you know, some of this you may have covered already, but just to reiterate, I think I'm going to ask them. Someone was wondering how they get invited to the Slack channel.
Yes, good question. In the slide deck that I will be sending, there is a link to the specific Slack site. So you'll go in, open this, I'll send it as a PDF slide deck. Just click the via Slack link and you'll be directed to our Slack page.
Great. And just to clarify, this slide deck is going to be emailed to everyone, all the participants that have signed up for the hackathon, correct?
Correct.
Yes.
If your name an email was on the original invitation to this event right now, you will be receiving the slide deck.
Great. And I'm just going to answer this other question too, that the Google Sheet with all the projects listed is also going to be hyperlinked into the slide deck.
Exactly. And feel free to circulate the slide deck with your team members. I know there are some late joining team members to projects. Feel free to circulate it there. And we'll also put it on our website under the list of resources.
Another one we have is how many people will be participating per project?
Yeah, this is another example of how decentralized we'd like to run this. Some projects may have 4 people and they're looking for a software engineer or a communication specialist. And some teams may have nobody and they want to add a full fleet of individuals. So we will leave that up to the project leads to determine how many people they want on their teams.
Yeah, but someone was asking if the project lead has a final say who's on the team.
Yes.
Yes, agreed. And then, but is there a deadline for joining a team?
There isn't a deadline that we're setting per se. Some teams may be ready to rock and roll as soon as they get the email that's being sent out after this. So I encourage folks to jump on it sooner rather than later, so teams can start to form and be finalized.
Great. Another good question we got is, will there be any check-in events during the 3 weeks by the organizers?
Yeah, what we're envisioning is to, check in with you guys via Slack. There'll be the mentorship request form that you can click on if that's a specific request. We'll try and use the different communication portals on Slack, like polling to see how folks are doing. Feel free as well to reach out to us if you have any specific questions. And as different other UCSF events come up that are publicly available, we'll also circulate those via Slack. So you could tune in to, say, for example, the UCSF Town Hall to hear what's happening clinically with, or epidemiology, public health-wise with COVID-19.
Yeah. Yeah, to that extent too, there's a few questions about the mentorship, what types of help people can get, or if there's a list available, or how that whole thing works.
Yeah, we didn't necessarily want to put an exhaustive list because we don't exactly know what challenge points, pain points may arise. So using this mentorship request form, you'll be able to type out what your problem is, as well as what kind of background it might be. If you guys are having some coding challenges, or if you're having, some how your project will be reimbursed, we have different folks to connect you with based on your needs. So there's not a list, but let us know what you're experiencing, and we'll try and connect you with folks that may be able to help.
So can someone join more than one team?
Absolutely. That's a great question. If you have the bandwidth and the energy to do so, we highly encourage you to take the reins and go with it.
Absolutely. And again, someone asked if there's targeted workshops and events during the hackathon, like an intro to Python and stuff like that.
At this stage, we do not have that. But as I mentioned, we'll kind of look to see, like, with our network, if that's something that is very much desirable by folks, and we'll probably do this via Q&A. We'll do our best to try and facilitate those. But at the moment, we do not have any hardcore workshops scheduled.
And last question that a few people have asked is, can I invite a friend to participate, or can participants still join in?
Yeah, I think we're going to officially end the number of project submissions that have come in. I don't think that it would be fair to all of you who've already joined and submitted your projects. But if there are other team members that you would like to continue to add that haven't registered, please let us know who they are and make sure that their names are captured in the Google Sheet of the list of participants. So I think that would be A-okay.
I think that about covers it. I tried to, some people had a similar question, so hopefully we've covered everyone's questions. But of course, please reach out to Nate or myself if we did not answer your question specifically.
Great. All right. Thank you very much, Jenny. Thank you, everyone, for attending. This was, we appreciate the time that you're taking. And as I mentioned, stay tuned for an email from me with follow-up details and links to all the different platforms. So great. Thank you very much, and happy hacking.
Yes, thank you.